Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zebra Talk, the podcast where we shine a little light onto the lives of the untold stories of the people who slide on their knees and count the threes. That's right, I'm talking about the referees, and today I'm joined by one of my better friends in professional wrestling, somebody that has done a lot of favors for me. Honestly, he's helped me out quite a bit. He was a fixture at Evolve Wrestling for a very long time. More recently, he has become one of the mainstays at Impact Wrestling. Please welcome Brandon Tolle. How you doing, Brandon?
Hey, buddy. Good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing really well. It's great to see you on here. I've been wanting to have this talk with you for a while. I talk about it a lot on the podcast, how you will work with people a lot and you'll travel with people a lot and interact with them a lot, but you won't necessarily get to like hear their story so much. So it's nice to actually get to sit down and get to know you a little bit.
I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. I know we've definitely crossed paths a lot over the years.
Absolutely. So let's just go ahead and dive on into it. Let's tell the audience a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and how you first became associated with professional wrestling.
Yep. Brandon Toll, been refereeing since the day I turned 18. So going on the 21st will be 18 years. Dating me a little bit. Born and raised Cincinnati, Ohio, now by way of suburban St. Louis, Missouri. So got started right at 18 in a little small time Christian promotion in Kentucky. That was literally the name of it was God in initials.
Oh wow! I thought you were going to say it was literally small
So
time Christian promotion. Gotcha.
no, literally God. So it was an outreach ministry. My trainer was trained by Shawn Michaels at the Texas
Mhm.
Wrestling Academy in the late 90s, in a couple of years that he was there. So it was a happenstance meeting right before I graduated high school. And so that's where I started things out, started the basics, kind of 101 for anybody. And
Absolutely.
then refereeing kind of split off about 6 months in when I was going and I build the ring, pay dues, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Well, we all do, right?
the place that I had I've been to had forgot to book a ref. So I had ref gear in my bag. And because I still hadn't kind of found my path yet as to
Mhm.
what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go.
So you kind of came
So
in like with the intent of like maybe I'll wrestle, maybe I'll figure out whatever I can do, but I just want to be involved.
I came in with the intent, yeah, just like I wanted to be in the wrestling the industry.
Sure.
Just it was just a matter of where. And we had all watched it obviously, and at that time 2003 you had TNA, we had it just in their fledgling years. You know what I mean? Fledgling year or so at that point. And so I just didn't know what path or didn't know how. Like I just know I
Mhm.
wanted to do it. And so promoter forgot to book a ref, came to me, said, "You look like your ref size. You want a ref?" And I said, "I know enough about it. I mean, I've studied enough tape. I'm kind of a tape, I still watch tape to this day."
Sure.
Um,
Were you a tape
and
trader like in the 90s and stuff?
No, because where I grew up was about an hour outside of Cincinnati in
Okay.
southeastern Indiana, and it was
So a
very
little too
rural.
far
I
from
was
people.
Yeah, I was probably one of about three wrestling fans, or at
Yeah,
least open
same.
wrestling fans at that time.
Gotcha.
So um I didn't tape trade or anything like that. So, but like I'd watched enough, you know what I mean, that I was like, I could do this. And I did it and it felt natural. So
Mhm.
after that, so I Ironman my first ever show.
Nice.
And my trainer looked at me and said, "I think we found your calling." And I said, "I think so too." And then it became segmented at that point, where it really started going into the nuance. And then did that for a few years until I kind of broke into the Ohio indie scene.
Mhm. It's pretty amazing how organic so many people's careers like came about in professional wrestling, and it's a credit to Ohio just how many like incredible people in the professional wrestling industry have actually come out of there. So you're just another one in the bunch.
Well, I mean, if when you look at, right now, me and myself and Sammy Callahan,
Mhm.
Sammy, former Impact World Champion, challenging for the Impact World Championship at Slammiversary against Kenny Omega,
Absolutely.
on the 17th. So Ohio has a litany of talent that has come through the years.
Definitely.
So I'm proud to be, I said, proud to be one of those few in the, the 513 and the 859, the 937, up and down I-75, basically, if you
Send it to
want
all
to
of
call it that.
Ohio.
Exactly.
Were you?
Exactly. Well, I mean, if you look at, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Finish your point.
No, I was gonna say, if you look at it as well, I mean, obviously now with being with Impact now, I mean, Chris Harris is another one that stands out. Abyss,
Mhm.
Machine Gun Carl Anderson, who's with us currently in the Good Brothers.
Yeah, absolutely.
All Cincinnati guys, all three of them. Roger Ruffin in the NWF, which is actually one of my first one of my two first exposures to independent wrestling
Mhm.
was with them. And I remember seeing a card because where I lived, I was right off the Ohio Indiana border, and the NWF, this independent promotion ran literally 10 minutes from my house. And I remember seeing the signs outside that had Abyss and Carl Anderson on it.
Mhm.
So it's a massive tie-in, obviously being with Impact now all these years later, and seeing these guys, the guys that were there in the years before me, that we all have the Ohio roots coming back around years later.
Yeah, it's amazing. You always hear about those stories, in professional wrestling. Things come full circle so often.
Oh Lord. Oh man, the past almost 4 years with Impact, that there's no other way that I could say that it feels like the worlds have come around full circle.
Mhm.
Whether it's people or experiences or whatever the case may be, it absolutely feels like it's a world's come full circle event. For my time at Impact, absolutely couldn't agree with that statement anymore.
Definitely. Speaking of growing up in Ohio, like that's a hotbed for all kinds of professional wrestling. Like, I'm assuming you were like a very in-depth professional wrestling fan, like throughout your childhood. Like, when did you first become exposed to it? Like, what was your first introduction? Were you going to
I
indie
was an eight.
shows or like?
No, I was an 80s baby, so a lot of
Mhm.
it was TV at the time. Whether it
Okay.
was Crockett, NWA, WCW, obviously WWE, ECW, the TV stuff. I mean,
Sure.
especially when I was living out in Indiana, there wasn't a whole lot of exposure. I mean, I think the NWF was about it. And
Sure.
obviously like MTV did that True Life, I Want to Be a Pro Wrestler with Heartland,
I do
with
remember
HWA
that.
back in like 2001. Yeah, so I got exposed to it basically by seeing. I never got to go to an NWF show. My parents wouldn't let me, flat out,
Mhm.
full stop. I was actually banned from watching wrestling at my mom's house from October 1998 until I graduated high school.
We have similar upbringings.
So
I
she
was
worked.
banned from watching wrestling in 2002 until 2011 when I was an
Yep.
adult.
So she worked. Yep. She worked. My mom worked 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Mhm.
So that was a perfect window to work because she was
Yeah,
done by probably 6:15, and wrestling started at 8 o'clock.
absolutely.
So I was always sneaking in. I said to my mom, actually, the last time I saw her, actually, we were talking about, because she was asking about Impact and how things are going, especially with the
Mhm.
pandemic and all that. And I made it a point of saying, as we were talking about, I said, Mom, I watched wrestling all those years when you were working 7 to 7, right? She's like, yeah, I figured as much after a while. I was like, okay, just so we're clear on
I
that.
tried to suppress it, but it really didn't work.
Oh no, Lord no. But yeah, no, a little bit of independent. I mean, I didn't understand, I didn't really grasp independent wrestling because there wasn't much of it there.
Yeah.
You had to go into Cincinnati proper or into
Hmm.
Northern Kentucky, or once you got to 01 OVW in Louisville, which Impact we have a partnership with now at this time with OVW. But there wasn't the availability, and especially because internet wasn't obviously what it is now, where the
Sure.
world's so small for everything, to where you really had to go out and really seek it. So obviously I knew something like that existed because of Heartland and because of NWF and
Mhm.
that sort of thing. But I mean, I toured Heartland right before I graduated high school. I thought about actually training at Heartland at
Mhm.
that time. But it just didn't happen. I ended up going the way I went. But yeah, outside of that, like, tape trading wasn't a thing. I mean, it was basically what was on TV. I wasn't a dirt sheets guy. I mean, the magazines obviously were out, but they're not really the dirt sheet like
Sure.
dirt sheet. Um, and then I had a friend, one of my other, like, the other two out of wrestling fans would go watch pay-per-views. And then, Impact, when TNA had the weekly pay-per-views,
Mhm.
he'd tape them and give them to me. So I mean, if you want to call that tape trading, maybe, you
To
know,
an extent, sure.
a little bit. Yeah, it was more like me borrowing them just to try to catch up. So watched a bunch of that until I got into college. And then once I got into college, basically is when I started down that road of you know, really kind of going in and then obviously getting into
Diving
the
into the world
independents.
of wrestling, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a
Absolutely.
it's
So
amazing
yeah.
how much of a bubble independent wrestling really is in. Like I had, same as yourself, I had no exposure to independent wrestling or anything outside of the world of like cable television wrestling. I thought the world of pro wrestling was like WWE, TNA, WCW, ECW, and like New Japan. And I knew that there was something up in Calgary that like the Hearts were associated with, but I had no idea what it was. Like that was it.
Yeah, and I guess it's a kudos to the advent of the internet because, and
Hmm.
I say this in my seminars. The world is not as big as we think it is anymore,
Yeah.
especially because everyone's streaming,
Hmm.
everyone's an on demand or Fight, you know, which we at Impact have the relationship with Fight when it comes to our pay per views and Impact
Right.
Plus and all that stuff. You know, so and I say that, and I said that even in probably the furthest place away you could when I did a couple of seminars in Australia a few years ago. I
Sure.
even said there, said the world is not what you think it is anymore. Everything can be seen
Mhm.
because everyone's putting it out into that medium. So yeah, from when we were growing up, I mean, I'm in my mid 30s. So, you know, I mean, it was still dial-up internet, you know, like in the late 90s, you know, when wrestling was hot, you know,
Yeah.
so you know, in that era. So
Which
it's
is a credit to
definitely for this
how
generation.
which is a credit to how amazing and how like impressive professional wrestling was at the time. Like obviously it's great now, but like the fact that so many people were seeing it at that time with like terrible internet, like or no internet in existence, like it's pretty wild how hot and heavy like wrestling was and how ravenous the fans were for it.
Yeah, and especially those that were actually going out that were going to the links you had to try to seek it out, you know. So, and I mean, I knew New Japan existed. I mean, I knew obviously Calgary. I knew about All Japan. Like, I
Mhm.
wasn't completely naive to everything.
Sure.
Obviously, the were you know all the big companies, but
Hmm.
not anything to the level of the independents. And then it was once I got into it and I started branching out, then it really became like okay, like you know, and then yeah, so
Well, let's get you into the ring now. Like obviously we've talked a little bit about how you got your first exposure and your first steps into, reffing. You kind of filled a void that was needed to be filled, but like when did you actually make the transition? Was it like real quick, immediate, like, oh, I did the ref thing, now I'm just gonna be a ref indefinitely? Or was there more of like kind of trying to figure out what you wanted to do?
no, after I did that first show,
Hmm.
it was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I mean, I'm not big. I'm not saying the small man. I don't want to say big man syndrome or anything like that, but I kind of knew with my size and
Sure.
my athletic capability to an extent. Not like today where I actually invest in lifting and I invest in my body and everything else like that. I knew this is it. Like it felt natural. It's like, okay, this is what I need to be doing.
Yeah.
And then it was off to the races at that point
Yeah, it felt a
and
really
really
similar
getting into
experience once I first did it. Like it was just like, I could try and go be a professional wrestler, but like I was a theater kid and this comes naturally to me. So why don't I just do like play to my strengths? Why try and
well,
go compete with, like Ricochet or something when I can be a good ref?
I, I have a music degree actually, so I kind of understand where you're coming from in that aspect. So I
Absolutely.
have a bachelor's in music and education, so I kind of understand where you're coming from in that aspect. So, and at that point, like I would always watch when I was watch tape, even growing up, I would watch the refs. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
and so, but then it became really enhanced in terms of really studying even harder once I realized that this is what I wanted to do, this is where I wanted to go, you know, to really watch and then I watched everybody, you
Mhm.
know. I mean, everybody that was out. And then that included going back into the archives and in the old school stuff and watching,
The
you
Tommy
know, at
Youngs
that
and
time
the
what was
Joey
current
Morellos and
time.
all that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then watching obviously the guys in New York and then watching obviously TNA. You know, we had Rudy and Andrew Thomas at the
Hmm.
time. And then obviously Earl came over in the later years. Brian, who is with us now,
Sure. Yeah.
which is a
Back
world's
again.
come
Yeah.
full circle thing.
Right.
Yeah, world's come full circle thing with Brian coming back in January. Um, So yeah, so it's watching everybody, because there's little things you can pick up from everybody. And one of the things I normally say is, don't try to be a carbon copy of whether it's Earl or Brian. Like, pick little pieces, things that may fit you,
Hmm.
I'm kind of old school at heart. So I had the fortune to see, probably about a decade ago, of getting to get some feedback and really sit down with Tommy Young,
Sure. That's amazing.
and
Yeah.
picked up some old school things from him. Some things that I still use to this day. But I mean, even since Brian's come back to Impact in January, I've had the opportunity to learn, for the fantastic opportunity to be able to pick his brain, because he's been to the top. He's done it all. So to be able to pick up some nuances and some things from him that I incorporate to what I'm doing now. So
Hmm.
I just said, I don't try to be a carbon copy of anybody. You pick up the little things that's good, and the little nuances and the little techniques are pretty much kind of standard around the board. Things that, as we, as the third in the ring, can do to help, because we always say it, and this has been told to me by a million people. A ref can help a match, but a ref can destroy a match just as
Yeah, absolutely. You talk a lot about the people that have helped influence your career, and you spoke briefly about like seminars that you've done around the world. Like, what
easy.
kind of influence do you feel like you've been able to give back onto the referee community? Have you taken anybody like under your wing? Have you mentored anybody before? Like, let's touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've done my seminars. I think that how do I want to put this? You gotta think about this for a second. Um, I think because I don't have a big social media presence,
Hmm.
like this, I don't have Facebook. I haven't had
Sure.
Facebook for almost a decade now. So
Yeah.
through a lot of the best times of what I've done in my career, I've never had Facebook. I think because I don't have such a large social media reach, I think I kind of get swept under the rug a little bit. Personally, and I'm
I,
not trying to knock myself. I'm just saying what it is. I don't do a whole lot of seminars
mhm.
comparative to some of my contemporaries, basically.
Sure.
But Jake Clements was, he had been working out of Cleveland. Jake, one of my dear friends, but definitely, tried to see him through, and
Yeah.
he came to Evolve. I got him there, and then obviously he went up north from there, and all that. So him a lot. I mean, I try to I just did a couple of indie dates for Lariato Pro
Hmm.
for Doc Allos last week, and he had a ref that's 19 that has been doing it maybe 2 years.
Okay.
And so I took the opportunity to really work with this kid. And it was probably one of the first times that I had worked with a ref that is that new, basically,
Yeah.
and that green, and to be able to share like life lessons of what I've learned that I wish I knew at
Help
19.
mold somebody right from the beginning. Yeah.
Exactly. Because a lot of what I've done over the years is basically as people are trying to get opportunities in places.
Right.
So it's a lot of giving detailed feedback, maybe more geared towards a television setting, instead of actually trying to be in those substantive formative years.
Sure. Or
And I
so
think
just
also
this
comes a
is how
lot of
you
that.
be a TV ref rather than just this is how you exist in pro wrestling and this is how you ref.
Yeah, exactly. Things like get your passport.
Hmm.
I can't tell you how many people don't have their passports, and I don't understand it.
It drives me crazy every time I
You know,
hear somebody say like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get my passport finally." I'm like, "You've been in wrestling for 6 years. Why don't you have your passport yet? Like, what are you
I
doing?"
got I got my passport to go for college because I had the
Hmm.
opportunity to go and sing over in South Korea, and I believe if I didn't get my passport when I did, I may not be doing what I'm doing right now
Sure.
with Impact. Because the first thing I got is I got a phone call about a week after I got my passport, and I got a phone call saying, "Hey, did you get your passport yet?" I won't mention the name of the person did. It's not doesn't
Hmm.
it's irrelevant. And I said, yes, I did. They said, okay, Scott Demore from Border City Wrestling is needing a ref. I'm giving him your number. He should be hearing from him relatively soon. A couple
Yeah.
hours later, I did. The following or week or two later, I took my first date outside of the United States in Tecumseh, Ontario, Canada for Border City. And that kind of started my path with Border City, which I think really rolls into, obviously I've had the relationship with Scott, now my boss at Impact.
Right.
I believe things happen in life for a reason. So I kind of, if I wouldn't have got my passport, then who knows at that point?
Yeah, I
You never
definitely
know.
I don't know if I believe in fate, but I definitely believe that like life gives you opportunities and it's up to you to decide whether or not you're going to follow them, you know, like life gives you a path and it's
Yeah,
up to you to walk down it if you are willing to do so.
yeah. And it may be weird at the time, but things happen for a reason. Like we
Yeah.
talked about, worlds come full circle. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't agree with that statement more.
It's kind of like me showing up the night that you were like kind of bowing out at Evolve. Like somebody was just like, "Well, who tipped you off? Who told you that like Brandon was retiring?" And I'm just like, "Nobody. I just came for a seminar." And they're like,
I
"No
didn't
way, you had
retire.
to know." Well, not retire, but retire
I
from Evolve. Excuse me.
Yeah, that was leaving. That
Yeah.
was leaving. Yes. Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
go
And
ahead.
yeah, I made it a point to keep that very quiet. I didn't want to make a big fanfare about that. So I know you were there. I think you were probably one of maybe a handful of people that knew that I was leaving because I had signed my contract with Impact. Um, you know, I had a good run there, but it was time. It was
Sure.
time. And I don't regret it in any way, shape, or form. Impact is home. And I've had so much fun, and it's been challenging. And I think this is something maybe we need to talk about, is the pandemic,
Mhm.
and how that as a ref, it's been exponentially. They're just the experiences. I think we could write a book on pandemic wrestling,
Sure.
especially now that we're starting
I'm
to
sure
come
a lot
out.
of books are going to be written on it eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, it's because I think we wrote the book on it.
Mhm.
It was probably the first time that we kind of had a forced off season of sorts,
Sure.
where no independent wrestling or anything like that. Like, I mean, we at Impact were doing, what we were doing in terms of no fans. I mean, we have fans coming back at Slammiversary on the 17th for the first time since Atlanta,
Which is amazing.
the first week of March 2020.
Mhm.
I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago.
Seriously.
So yeah, it's going to be really, really good to have fans back, for the first time in more than 16 months. I'm, oh, I can only imagine. It's yeah, it's like welcome back with open arms.
Absolutely. So we're kind of jumping around a little bit. Let's backtrack a
Yep.
little and let's get you from when you're first starting out to refing to when things kind of really
Yep.
kicked off for you. Obviously, you know, you're like full tilt. You want to be involved as much as possible. What's the loop look like that you're doing in like your early 20s? What kind of places are you hitting? Like, what kind of cars are you in? What are some of the highlights of things that led up to like the successful years? Because obviously everybody's got like the road years.
I came up, I met Sammy
Mhm.
and some other people from Ohio, which I would rather not mention just because it's not
Sure.
worth mentioning their names. Um, and that was like 2007, where I kind
Mhm.
of was in Cincinnati and then met a promoter that ended up going into Dayton, Ohio. From there, it kind of broke out Indiana, Pennsylvania. Like it started, obviously, like I just said, um,
Up into Border
with getting the
City and everything
opportunity from
once,
Scott
yeah.
with the Border City. Um, Ended up started to do some stuff with Ring of Honor.
Mhm.
Um, Very, in kind of the third spot, which, we'll leave that alone. But that's where it kind of started breaking out. And then what? So that was 08, 09, 08. I mean, yeah, 08, 10. I mean, 09 was like uh was Marquez,
Mhm.
um,
My
and Bob
boss.
Trobich, with doing that. And that was like Charlotte, California at the
Mhm.
time. That was into more 2010, 2011. I mean, I think the most infamous road loop as a whole, and I did this one, and this is the big thing, is there was a time where I just kind of had to choose. I had to go my own path,
Yeah.
basically. Like I had to break away from those that I had come up with, or I was in the cars with for a couple years. Just opportunities had come to me that I needed to take, and I knew that to do this, I would kind of have to go on my own.
Mhm.
And so I'm very used to just being by myself in a car,
Yeah,
to be honest
absolutely.
with you. So I had to kind of go my own path. And so I remember one time I drove Cincinnati to Manassas, Virginia, Manassas, Virginia to New York City,
Mm-hmm.
New York City to Detroit, Detroit to Windsor,
Mm.
Windsor to Dayton, Ohio, Dayton to Charleston, West Virginia, and then Charleston back to Cincinnati, all in what was that, like 6 days, 6, 7 days.
That is an insane loop.
So
That's
yeah,
yeah. Kudos.
it was and but it was I was sleeping in my car,
Yeah.
like, at the rest areas. Like even though it was just me, myself, and I mean,
Mhm.
I had a nice car at the time,
Sure.
so, but
Maybe
it
it
was
was
me,
comfortable,
myself,
but
and
it's
I.
still you driving between, like literally the entire eastern seaboard and like the northern Midwest and Canada over a 6 day period.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot of overnight driving and
Mhm.
catch your sleep where you can and that sort of thing. So that's probably the craziest road loop that I've done. So, but it was all kind of like, it was probably, I would say probably '08 is when things really started kind of kicking off.
I do want to kind of
Things
touch
started to
on what
get
I
some
think was a
traction.
really important lesson that you like just kind of mentioned here a minute ago, where like you focused on there will be a time in your career, and this is for refs and for wrestlers, but eventually where like you have to break away from the pack. And I remember very specifically like having that same realization at one point. Like I was still jumping in cars with my buddies and going and doing the loop that I was doing all the time. And I remember very distinctly like everybody was late, like really late. And I realized how like seriously I needed to take everything, and that if I was going to keep relying on other people to be as punctual as I was, that like it was going to hold me back. So like eventually you just got to go out and do your own thing.
You're on time if you're 5 minutes early. You're late if you're on time. And I can
Absolutely.
say that that is something that I still live on even to this day.
Mhm.
I am never, if I have a call time, I'm there because, and especially, that's part of being professional. And even to this day, I subscribe to that rule. I hate being late. And if I'm late,
Same.
someone knows about it and there is a real good reason
Mhm.
as to why I'm late,
I feel
and
like
someone
that.
knows about it.
I feel like that, in addition to like obviously your quality in the ring and everything, those are real like building blocks as to the career that you've built. Because like you touched on it earlier, like you don't have a Facebook, you're not that interactive in social media, but like look at the career that you've built over the last, the last 18 years. Like you've been in some of the like top name promotions like all over the world for a decade more, 18 years. Like yeah,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily need social media to like make something out of this.
No, I have my Twitter
Mhm.
that I am active on. I have my Instagram, which I try, but I don't have a Facebook, so I lose a lot of the functionality. I have an email. I have a business email, a
Mhm.
personal email, and a cell phone.
Yeah,
Like if you cannot get a hold of me one of those ways,
it's your
like
fault.
Facebook is not, yeah, Facebook is not an end all.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of become in some respects a lazy way.
sure.
I think because people have become complacent with it, but that just, I made the decision to get rid of Facebook. It was a personal decision, and I don't regret it to this day. I have absolutely no need for it, and I probably will go down and as one of the few that that will that I don't know many people. I think probably the only other person that I know that doesn't have a Facebook was Timothy Thatcher, and
Sure.
he had a flip phone until
Yeah,
about probably 2.5 years ago.
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
that,
Timmy's
like I
notoriously
was
opposed
even
to that. Yeah.
well, he had to because of where he was traveling and the schedule he was keeping at that time. Because him and
Sure.
I were working together in a lot of places,
Mhm.
and he like that even impressed me. So but it's absolutely like that you don't need it. You like and that but that comes to the grind and that comes to the hustle of okay, you don't have this. I don't want to say luxury, but you don't have this resource. So then how do you do it without it?
Mhm.
You know.
And what would you say like are the ways that you went about doing that? Like you don't have to share all your secrets or anything like that, but like what would you
No,
say
it's
is
not
like the
secrets at
real
all.
like the thing that really helped drive you into the like scenario that you are now? Like was it just hustle? Was it like reaching out in emails? Was it reaching out to promoters? Was it word of mouth? Like what do you feel was like the biggest thing for you?
I think it was probably a combination.
Mhm.
I think obviously there's the hustle is real. Obviously, to do that big loop that I did, that was
Sure.
hustle. Because no one's gonna make your business for you because we are all at the end of the day we're all 1099s. We are all self employed. I'm Sandals Enterprises LLC, you're Odie Brown LLC. Like, you know what I mean? We're all our own business,
Yeah.
and nobody is going to hand you success.
Yeah.
Nobody handed me. I mean, I made the most of every opportunity that's been given to me. And if it wasn't for making the most of them, I wouldn't be what I'm doing right now with Impact. Plain and
Definitely.
simple.
Nobody's going to hand it to you.
But
You
it
got to
was
go chase for it. Yeah, absolutely.
exactly. And you're going to have to work, and you're going to have to grind. You're going to have sleepless nights. You're going to
Hmm.
miss holidays, birthdays, the whole nine. It applies even to refs. I think it's a lot of hustle, and a little resourcefulness. If you're, I mean, there were times where I was Googling independent promotions in certain states and just trying to find that what was out there, because I knew without Facebook, that was a resource I was intentionally, taking away from myself because I didn't
Sure.
want it. But with the internet, like we talked about earlier, the world is small, you know, and then once things started rolling, and the ball started going, then it became okay. Obviously with Twitter, there's out there, and then it became okay trying, but it's still, even to this day, still hustling myself, because I'm at a point where I'm one of the few that is on television that can work the independents.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I can still work the independents. So the hustle's still there. It's a lot different of a hustle because of television. Because I don't want to say I'm not looking for an opportunity, but it's, business gets different. Business becomes different especially when you make it to that level. Um, but yeah, so it was finding emails, and I had a promo stand-up photo, I had a
Hmm.
video reel, YouTube links, be able to, short 5 minute, something that, I know someone would look at, and the hustle is out there. So it's just trying to use those resources that we have, to that point. Maybe a little bit of word of mouth. But it was a little bit of everything, some more so than others. But you just have to make the best. And if you want it, I mean, if you want it, you'll find a way to do it. I mean, when I was starting out, I mean, I was going to college in my bachelor's degree, taking 16 credit hours. 12 is normal.
Yeah.
16 is considered a heavy class load.
Have fun
And
trying to
was
get
working,
sleep. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and was working 40 hours a week, and was doing independent bookings at the same time. Like, I found a way to make it all work.
So basically, somehow you survived. We aren't really sure how, but somehow you survived and thrived, obviously.
Yeah. No personal life, basically.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I mean, if I wasn't working or in class, I was trying to get on the road.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I can count the number of friends that I have that are not related to wrestling on one hand. Um, you know, um, so that's just, what you're getting into, and that's just the nature of it. Wouldn't change anything for it. No,
Same.
would not change a single thing.
It's always funny when those like quote unquote real life friends kind of like patch back into your like life again for a few minutes, and they're just like, "Oh, you still doing that wrestling thing?" And they like have some kind of preconceived notion of like what it is that you're doing with your life, and they just have no clue.
I'm fortunate enough, the friends that I keep, they're not actual wrestling fans.
Mhm.
They have told me that they do watch Impact.
Nice.
One of them actually said they went out to a restaurant one night with their significant other, and Impact actually happened to be on the TV.
Mhm.
So I've gotten those messages before.
Hey, I see you on my TV
Yeah,
right now.
exactly,
That's
exactly.
awesome.
So my friends, the few that I'm close with, understand it because they've known me since college,
Mhm.
like when my freshman year. So they've seen me go through the grind, and they saw the sacrifices of just never being around. And then, those are the people that stood up with me when I got married,
Yeah,
so those few
absolutely.
people. So you know, my mother may not understand it to this day. And she's, I think, only seen one show I've ever done, period. And I think maybe a
Yeah.
couple episodes of Impact just by choice. But yeah, so there's those people outside that may not understand it, but can respect the work ethic, because that parallels even outside of, just in life in general.
Definitely. Yeah, I got my mom to come to one show once upon a time, and she sat through one match that I didn't ref, and then was like, "I can't handle all the violence and all the yelling. I gotta go." And like, you came
My
to a wrestling show. What'd you expect?
my mother's a nurse
Hmm.
of 30 years plus now.
So all she
So,
sees is what
and
they're doing to their bodies.
well, I'm also her $1 million baby.
Hmm.
Actually, most people don't know this, so I'll throw it out here. I'm half of an identical twin set. I have an
Oh,
identical
okay.
twin brother, who has nothing to do with the wrestling industry.
So we got no Hebner
He's on
spots coming up.
television. We tried back with actually it was with Marquez. Actually, we
Hmm.
tried because my brother and I were in Southern California at the same time. This is
Sure.
back when we were shooting down in Hollywood proper,
Hmm.
in that theater that we had to unbolt all the seats out of. And we tried because he was in town for a convention, and we tried getting him to come in to do it, and he just wouldn't bite.
Just wasn't
So
about it.
yeah, no, he's actually a chief meteorologist.
Oh, very
So
cool.
he's on television. We're both on television, but
We can switch between them.
so yeah, so no, but I'm $1 million baby because me and my brother were 6 weeks premature at birth, and shoot, our hospital bill was $1 million each. Um,
That's it.
Before insurance.
That's
So
staggering.
so
Yeah, that's
that's
awful.
still calls me that to this day. So $1 million baby. So watching her oldest son take a bump, it's not something that she was really inclined to stick around for.
Was she like really protective of the two of you, like growing up? Were you guys involved in like
Yeah.
sports or anything like that? Or I mean, I know
Nope.
you said you were a
Nope.
music major.
No, actually, we weren't physically cleared to do
Hmm.
sports. And that was kind of half the battle. Like I tried wrestling in
Hmm.
like 8th grade, but I was so like weight wise, I wasn't where I should have been. And it just didn't work physically from a physical standpoint. Like, it's only been until adulthood, in the past decade or so that I've really,
You've taken your
I'm
fitness to like a whole
21.
nother level. Yeah.
Yeah, since about 2009. I was in a real bad auto accident in
Hmm.
2009, and then was still doing refing on top of it, and yeah. And so, I mean, even through the pandemic, I built a home gym.
Hmm.
I don't go to gyms. I hopefully will never go to a gym again. Actually, I posted it on social media yesterday. Happy early birthday present to me. I bought a squat rack
Nice.
for my home gym. So I've got a squat rack, I've got bench, I've got adjustable dumbbells, I have barbell, I got a rower, got an elliptical. Like I've got a full run in my basement, in my home gym. And so I hope to never have to step into a gym when I'm at home ever again at the rate I'm going. So trying to add to it. But fitness, I mean, that's another thing for refs today. I mean, look at us at Impact,
Hmm.
look at anywhere else. The
Hmm.
days of the 80s
Look at
style ref
Joseph Mandak. Like, oh my
gone,
gosh. Yeah.
are gone. Yeah, Manta, I remember before he started lifting.
Right.
Those days are gone, long gone. You know, um, this is an athletic business. You
Hmm.
know, so we have to be on par as well. So I saw it coming a little bit, and obviously I physically I just needed to do it. Um, and I've dove in ever since. So, and honestly, I'll be 36 coming up here on the 21st, July 21st. I feel better at 36 than I did at 26.
Yeah, I've been
That's something I wish I'd have known.
I've been
Yeah,
kicking up
that's
fitness a
something
lot myself lately, and like same thing. Like in high school, like I could barely get through a mile, and like now that I'm involved in pro wrestling and that I'm like really working for something, like I feel a lot better than I did at those days. Like, and I hear you about like gyms. Like, I've been really spoiled throughout the pandemic. Like, I'm dating somebody that's a fitness instructor, and she just has like a whole gym in her shed, and I just am obscenely spoiled. Like the home gyms are where it's
I'm
at, 100%.
I, I'm 2 hours a day basically. I do an hour of weight work. I do an hour on the elliptical every
Hmm.
day, and then I take my dog for. I have a pup. I have a puppy. I have a 2-year-old pit bull, and sweetest girl in the world, Abbey Road, and
It's a
I
great
take
name
her
for
for
a
a
dog.
walk. I take, yeah. As a musician, I get
Yeah.
it. So we and I take her for at least 30-minute walk a day.
Hmm.
So I'm very, very active in terms of trying to, you know, um, keep myself going because I try to keep my diet the best I can. Not always the best. So I have to do extra to compensate for
Sure.
it. But yeah, so this is an athletic business now. And you have to meet the level because, I mean, we never know. You may have to go an hour
Yeah.
like we had, We had Josh Alexander and TJP go for an hour
What an
on BTI that went
incredible
into
match.
Impact on
And
Access. Yeah, it was a
kudos
phenomenal
to
match.
Impact for putting the full matchup on YouTube, by the way. Like, if you guys haven't seen that yet, like, pause the
Yeah,
video, go watch the match. Like, it's incredible. Like, I'm
I
dying for an Iron Man match personally. So, yeah.
I tweeted it out during the Iron Man match, or and then afterwards, too, for refs. Go watch Brian Hebner.
Hmm.
That was a master class
Yeah.
on being a referee for that match from so many levels, whether it's nuance or just so much to learn in 65 minutes, whatever. So I've done an Ironman. I actually have done more than 60.
Hmm.
I did, at least to what I found, my knowledge, the longest women's match
Hmm.
in history. And that was with Shimmer.
Okay.
And that was Tessa Blanchard and Mercedes Martinez. We went 75 minutes.
That's incredible.
So or not Shimmer. I think it might have been Rise instead of
Sure.
Shimmer. Like the proper credit, but yeah, so I've done 75, and I knew about 2 months ahead of time that was coming. So I
Hmm.
had to change the way I train, and that was one where I brought a cooler with me in the locker room, and for the two of them and myself, mixed bottles of half water, half Pedialyte.
Yeah.
Stay hydrated. Like, you have to train real differently for that type of match. That's not something you can throw, but you have to be able to be ready to be able to put yourself in that position, whether it's to train for that type of match. Like, you can't just be sedentary and then say, hey, I'm going to go do 60 minutes,
Yeah, definitely not.
because that is an animal. And so kudos to those guys. That, hands down, that's probably one of the best matches. I know it's probably the best match I've seen this year. It might be one of the
Sure.
top 5 matches
I mean, I
I've
think
seen
that's
from the
probably
two of
gonna
them.
go down as like one of the best Impact matches in like history. Maybe not like, top 10, like best match of all time or anything, but like it's in the conversation for top 100, top 50, something like that, I'm sure.
I've worked with both Josh and TJ. I've known him for many years, and I've worked with him in other places. And I can say that, what Josh is doing right now as X Division champion is akin to what I would like to say of like AJ Styles
Yeah.
as X Division champion. He
Putting
has
the
taken
title on the
the
map.
division. Yeah, he's taken the division on his back
Hmm.
and just to help elevate that division as champion, especially given the fact that our world champion is not on TV with us every week,
Sure.
obviously, given the situation we're in right now with Kenny and his commitments, obviously, as dual champions with AEW and Impact. So he is just kind of taking it as an undertaking to himself, and it's next level.
Hmm.
It's next level. I'll be honest with you, I can't wait to see when we go to Slammiversary on the 17th. It's Ultimate X for the first time in
I'm so
2
excited.
years
Yeah.
or over 2 years. Ultimate X, Josh, Rohit, Ace Austin, Petey, Chris Bay, and Trey Miguel. And I've officiated a couple of those.
Mhm.
But this one I got a real special feeling about,
Yeah, it feels special.
as
It
to how
feels
this one can
there's a lot
go.
of
And
buzz. Yeah.
I think this one's going to be, this one could very well be the Ultimate X match that I've
Mhm.
had the privilege of seeing in person at Slammiversary. So yeah, it's just amazing. So from a ref standpoint, but kind of being back the ref standpoint, just, it's an athletic business now. You
Mhm.
have to, like, if you don't know how to work out, invest in a personal trainer. I'm looking personally, because I said earlier, my diet is kind of garbage. And I
Mhm.
also have some food restrictions because of allergies and things like that. I'm trying to find a dietitian to actually figure out how to write me a plan to try to kind of get me to where I want to be with my goals.
I mean,
So
considering
I'm
the
taking.
industry that we're involved in, I'm sure we can find you somebody. Like,
Oh,
I'd
I
also,
think so. I
yeah.
think so.
I think
But
somebody
yeah,
in pro
so
wrestling knows a dietitian.
and I'll say this, just to, most people don't know this, but I mean, if you go back and look at pictures of me in October of last year
Mhm.
compared to now, I dropped between November, between the week before Thanksgiving and early February, I dropped about 35 pounds.
It's amazing.
and it was all on diet and cardio. And I
Mhm.
mean, I stripped a lot of things out of my diet. Just I needed to. I was just, I mean, I noticed it. I know others noticed it, but I was looking a little heavy in the midsection.
Sure.
And so it was time to go. It was time to drop it. So that meant no, that meant I brought my own meals, like my own
Mhm.
pre-made meals to Thanksgiving and
What you
Christmas.
got to do? Yeah.
And there were no sweets, there were no anything, there was nothing at New Year's. It was what I needed to do to get ready for January and Hard to Kill. And then afterwards, I didn't look at the scale for January. I knew things fit better.
Sure.
I was feeling a lot better. I could see it in the mirror. I just happenstance in February happened to look on the scale and see where I'd come from. So even now at this level, it's still like, you're working with the best, and you're in that, that 1% of referees that are on television. Like that's just an expectation. It
Yeah.
adds to, once
It's
again,
up
your
to you to look
professionalism.
like you belong in there with the rest of the people that you're
It's your
surrounded by.
professionalism, how you handle the opportunity. And it's
Mhm.
not just in the ring. It's when you're out of the ring. It's when you're doing something like this, doing a podcast, how you're handling yourself. How you handle yourself on the road, how you handle yourself at independent bookings. Like there's just a expectation that comes from there. Um, that, and a lot of refs don't think about that. And especially in this day and age of social media, like just, how it's way more encompassing than just what you do bell to bell. Granted, that's a
Mhm.
good, big part of it,
Sure.
but it is so more invasive. I mean, we could spend probably you and I could probably talk for 2 or 3 hours about that.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
my seminars I've done normally I go about 3 hours, and
Mhm.
I still feel I'm missing things to cover. So yeah, it's way more than I think for any refs coming up. That it's very much all encompassing.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for the younger guys to like lose sight of the fact that like there are opportunities out there that like can come very quickly that like will be taking a look at like everything that you've done, and either it's
Yes.
going to be good or it's going to be bad. It's easy for guys to be doing, like for myself personally, like my first year, I never really thought that I was going to get out of the Bay Area. I thought that I was just going to be doing like local drive-in shows for like 5 years, and then eventually I would just, either keep going or not. And then opportunities afford themselves, doors open, you bust your butt and work really hard and do long drives like we've been talking about. And yeah, either it works out or it doesn't. Um,
Yeah, and and how you handle yourself, because you never know who's talking to who.
mhm.
You know, you know, um, as they like to say from Letterkenny, bad gas travels fast in a small town.
Yeah.
So, as they say in Letterkenny. So, and it's the same principle. You know, even in this business. Because you never know who's around, you never know what they might do or who they know, or you would be surprised. And I can say that because I've from doing seminars, whether it's in companies prior to Evolve or as we've seen as you're even obviously now being on TV, you get the messages of, hey, what do I need to do this, or what do I need to do to get an opportunity to try to be at Impact or whatever the case
Hmm.
may be like that. Obviously, I don't have that to say, and I think it's because I don't have a big social media presence. I don't get that a whole lot, but I do to some respects.
Sure.
Um, you know, um, so, but you never know with those refs, like what you hear or what you see, or you know what I mean. And we're all still learning, even to this day. Even to this day, I'm still learning. I'm still learning things that I didn't think that were things to learn. That I'm still learning to this day. And I'm gonna learn more about our craft all the way until the day I decide I'm done with it and retire. You know, and whatever I do after that, I'm still gonna learn about it after that. So but you never know. You never
Absolutely.
know. You never
Now,
know who you're gonna run into. You never know who's gonna know about you or who you've done or what you've done. You know what I mean? And this, because we've been together in certain places over the years.
mhm.
That pool, especially for refs, that pool gets smaller
Yeah.
the higher you go.
Yeah, absolutely. when you really think about it, like the contracted or even just like television referees that are all over the world, there's what, 20, 30, maybe 40?
You want to do for five, probably eight, nine.
I mean, between, WWE, NXT, Impact,
Yeah,
ROH,
15,
New Japan,
20,
like it's a very, very small
30.
pool.
It's probably 35 to 40
Yeah.
is probably the number. That's 35 to 40 out of how many, you know?
Thousands. I mean, how many members do we have in Zebra
Yeah.
Talk? It's up to like almost 1,100 now, and like that many people shooting for that many spots. Like you got to make sure that all of your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you feel like
Yeah.
is the most influential piece of advice that you've gotten along the way? What would you like people to walk away from this knowing?
Kevin Nash told me this in 2008
Sure.
when I was working with him in for Border City. And we worked for another little independent promotion the next day. I had the chance to sit down and actually ask for feedback from him.
Hmm.
And yeah, we talked. He talked about some of the mistakes I made,
Hmm.
and the line he told me at the end of it, I've never forgotten, and that was, and he complimented me on my work and all that. He's like the little things. He's like the little things as a ref can turn you from a good ref into a great ref,
Hmm.
and a great ref that will have lasting power or staying power within the industry. It because of what we do is nuanced,
Hmm.
more so than I think a lot of people know and or realize.
Absolutely.
And I think that was really kind of a jumping off point where I really started really getting into the nuance, into the real granular things.
Things kind
And
of
I mean,
started to
it's
click on another level. Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's all the way down to whether it's body language or demonstratives, as I like to say, or I mean granular stuff.
Hmm.
But that granular stuff can mean a lot in the grand scheme of things.
Sure.
So I think that's honestly, I think that's probably one of my bigger takeaways.
Well, thank you very much for that. We are kind of winding things down, and as some of you may know, I do like to offer my guests an opportunity at the end of every episode. If there are any folks that you've really enjoyed your time with on the professional in the professional wrestling world, if there's anybody that you feel like the audience should really give another look at, or somebody that you just want to celebrate, let's go ahead and talk about that.
Oh, I obviously we talked about Josh Alexander.
Sure.
Um, I think that as the landscape has changed with wrestling in the past 12 months, I think there's the people that I really, really am just real high on, and I'm throwing out there. Love him or hate him. W. Morrissey
Hmm.
came into Impact here recently. Um, yeah, he's gonna make it. He's going to make a real impression. I think he already has, but I mean, just look out. I mean, the opportunity he has. Chris Bay. I remember Chris Bay before
Yeah.
he came to Impact. Chris Bay.
I don't really talk about this
Uh,
a lot. Chris Bay is one of my best friends in wrestling. Like Chris
Chris
Bay,
Bay.
I love that guy so much.
Chris Bay. And then I'm calling it now, and I know he's not thinking about this because he's the X Division champion, but I can absolutely see Josh Alexander as a world champion.
Oh yeah.
I could see him as Impact World Champion on the right opportunity. I absolutely 110% believe that with every fiber of my being. I've known that for years with him because
Hmm.
I worked with him long before Impact. I absolutely think that Josh Alexander will be a world champion.
Talk about how well he's done for himself, post North. Like sometimes tag teams break up or not break up, but you know what I'm saying. And you never really know
Yeah,
what's going to happen to either person. And like, man, Josh has really just like hit his stride and like torn it up in the singles. It's been amazing to see what he's doing.
I I don't want to sound arrogant when I say this.
Hmm.
I knew he was capable of this.
Sure.
Like, because I've seen, like, you can see it, and especially with him coming back after the neck injury
Hmm.
that kind of forced him to quasi retire. And then he came back, like, you just you could see it clicked, and you could just see, given the right opportunity and get in the right place, like, the fact that he couldn't work in the United States for a while, just was criminal in my opinion. And he came to Impact, and I, for one, was just overjoyed. I knew He had what it took, and I cannot toot the horn for him hard enough.
Sure.
Like, he will be world champion one day. Mark my
I
words.
can
Mark it
absolutely see
now.
it. 100%.
July 2021. It's going to happen. Um, I mean, if you look at our roster, I mean, we have, you know, obviously we got guys like Eddie, and who's Eddie's our heart and soul. You know what I mean? But we have a lot of young talent coming up the pike.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? On our company, on our roster, and you know, it's to watch them develop. Like we said, Chris, with him coming from the West Coast, and obviously Josh. Obviously, Josh has been around a long time. But yeah, I think those are probably the top two that can kind of toot off my head at that point. I'll throw one more out there just real quick. Moose, just the difference in Moose, and I've known him prior to coming to Impact.
Sure.
And the transition that man has made in the past 14 months
Hmm.
is just insane. And I think back in January, Hard to Kill, when he ended up in the main event tag match against Good Brothers and Kenny Omega. I think that was just the point where it was show off time.
Yeah,
And I think it's
absolutely.
been off to the races with him ever since. It once so same on him. Like, I mean, I know he's been around a while, obviously, but it's you have those moments where it's that next level moment. So we can throw him in that category as well. So there's
Definitely.
3 or 4 off the top of my head.
Some really, really incredible names to follow. And that was such a wonderful introduction into you and your life. And thank you very much for being here and letting us get to know you a little bit and hear a little bit about your story and how things have come from, like you said, your 18th birthday till now. It's been quite a run. Thank you so much for being here, Brandon.
You're welcome. I'm going to celebrate my birthday Slammiversary Saturday night, July 17th on pay-per-view Fight TV. If you're not making plans, please join us. First time we got fans in more than 16 months. Also, I'm throwing this out here as well, just because I miss fans that much. We're going to throw it in saying as well. We have shows on Sunday and Monday, the 2 days after Slammiversary in Nashville.
Stick around,
Fall out of
folks.
Slammiversary. Yes, stick around. They're being taped to air for Access TV. Tickets available impactwrestling.com, and then Access TV every Thursday night, 8 East, 7 Central. If you have the internet, you have the ability to watch Impact. So whether it's through Access or Twitch, I'm going to toot that horn too, because, don't, stop sleeping on us like this. It's going to be fantastic. I'm kind of stumbling on my words, but I'm excited for this. I'm excited to have fans back. I'm excited for Slammiversary coming up. I'm excited to be a part of Impact. Once again, we talked about Worlds Full Circle. Just the way my trajectory went in the early years and things like that. It all feels like World Circle. So, but thank you for having me on, Odie. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you again for being here. See you, folks.